Toy-polloi, a shadowy flight into the dangerous world of a toy restorer who does not exist. Toy-polloi, a young loner on a crusade to champion the cause of the broken, the helpless, the powerless, in a world of collectors who operate above the law.
Welcome to Toy-polloi. No Legos were harmed in the making of this video.
Hello and welcome to another video from Toy-polloi, and the first part in what's going to be a series of videos restoring a vintage Palitoy Death Star. Now this Death Star was very kindly given to me by fellow YouTuber Jules Burt. In a recent video you'll have seen me unbox it and sort of get all the pieces out, and it's one of those projects that's going to take a fairly long time to sort of sort out and fix up because the Palitoy Death Star is made out of cardboard, so it's a fairly delicate playset, and every part of the playset that Jules sent over needs some work doing to it. Most of it is pretty dirty, but then a lot of the cardboard also has some damage to it. I've got just a few of the pieces here. There's actually more of this. I've just sort of unpacked a few bits so you can see. So basic sort of bits that need fixing are this sort of floor section. You can see it's quite dirty. I'm just going to be cleaning that with lighter fluid, and then a lot of the top surface is starting to come loose. This is caused by water damage. So I would think most people would call it sort of delamination. There's a printed surface which is stuck onto the cardboard, and that is just sort of coming unglued, so all of that is going to need to be repaired in some way. There are also other issues where bits have ripped quite badly, so we're going to have to work out a way to repair those. So here's another piece of the playset, and you can see again this has sort of delamination going on. The top surfaces are coming apart, but you can also see that it is starting to tear apart. Here you can see there's some quite bad tears on it, so again all of that is going to have to be repaired in some way. But really the first process for this whole playset is that every part of it is going to need a good clean and a good wipe down. So let's get started on that. It's going to take quite a while because there are so many pieces, but it really is the first stage, and we've got to be very gentle as we do this. I'm going to start on one piece that doesn't have too much damage to it. This one is just dirty. You can see there's a lot of marks on it, and also it is starting to come unstuck. And to clean this I'm going to be using lighter fluid. Now a lot of people ask me why I use lighter fluid, and really the trick is when I was at art college they used to teach us that we could clean our bits of artwork and things that we'd drawn using this stuff called clean art, and clean art really is just lighter fluid, so I've been using it ever since. It's a very sort of gentle way of cleaning. It smells a bit, but it evaporates very quickly, and it's a good way of sort of removing little marks and stuff. So all you do, a bit of lighter fluid, and I have a bit of kitchen towel here, and I'm just going to squirt some lighter fluid onto the kitchen towel and then gently rub all over the surface. It's probably not going to make a huge amount of difference to the sort of final look of this because this is such ingrained dirt, but it will certainly take off sort of the grime that is on the surface and make it sort of smell a lot better, because again it smells a little bit musty at the moment, and it will also should help kill some of the mould that is also sort of in the cardboard because this has got damp over the years. So you can see just a gentle wipe over like that, actually quite a lot of dirt comes off it. We'll turn this one over. The underside of this doesn't look too bad. I'm going to keep changing the bit of kitchen towel I'm using as well, so that I don't sort of keep rubbing dirt into this surface. I'm being very careful not to rip any of the sort of top bits of paper where it's come undone. You can see here on these little tabs it's already quite loose, so I don't want to rip any of that, causing any more problems. But just a gentle rub over should clean it up quite nicely. You can see that's the dirt coming off. That does look a little bit better. These sort of watermarks, there's no real way of improving those because those are stains within the paper. So just sort of have to learn to love those, and this is going to certainly be a bit of a wabby-sabby Death Star by the time it's finished, but I want to just get it so that it's actually displayable. I think that's not too bad for a first go. You still just see there's some dirt coming off. So I'm now going to do this to every single piece of this playset, which is why it's going to take quite a while to do, and I'm going to need a couple of cans of lighter fluid. now that I've given everything a good wipe down, it's suddenly sort of starting to feel a lot better. It's still got a lot of marks on it, but I think those are just going to be things that you're going to have to live with. So before I do any of the sort of major fixes, I want to start fixing some of the simpler issues. And as you can see, a lot of the pieces have this sort of delamination going on, so the surfaces are starting to part, which makes it very awkward if you want to try and actually put the playset together. This one's got pretty much all the edges are sort of coming apart. So I'm going to start sticking those back down, and for that I'm going to be using EVA glue, which is like PVA glue, but it's acid free. This is the sort of stuff that people who do bookbinding use. It's a very sort of gentle glue. It takes a little while to sort of go off, but it's pretty easy to apply. So I've just poured a bit of EVA glue into here, and I'm going to be using a paintbrush to apply it to the surfaces and then wiping it down with a tissue, make sure there's nothing sort of squeezing out the edges. And it's going to, again, it's another laborious job because there's so many of these surfaces that need doing, but it's the only way to start. So I've just got one piece here, and I'm going to work my way around all of these, making sure I've glued down every piece that is loose. So we'll start on this surface. So you can see this got quite a large section here, so I'm going to get some EVA glue on this brush and start brushing it in. And I'll go in as far as I can to make sure that I glue every sort of part of this surface back down. Like that. And I'm just going to use this tissue so I don't get glue on myself. I should be able to nicely wipe that down. You can see that glue's straight away. We'll just let that set, but I'm going to continue around this board, and I'll do every piece that needs a little bit of gluing. As I say, it is a laborious job because there are so many bits of this board that need fixing. Some of them are a little bit bowed as well, so for those I'm going to be putting them under some heavy books, and those should hopefully start to sort of get a little bit flatter given some time. If that doesn't work, then I'm going to iron them, but this is quite thick card, so ironing probably won't make that much difference. So heavy books just for a little while should make a difference. But before we do that, as I say, we've got to get every part glued. Right, well, I've managed to do a fair chunk of this, and already the playset is starting to feel a lot more sturdy. This is not the sort of job you can do all in one go because of the nature of this playset. It's printed on both sides, so I'm just doing sort of one side and then I'll turn over and do the other side another time. You can see here this is one of the larger sort of mid sections, so I've glued all of this side because this whole chunk had sort of come loose, but you can see on the other side we still have the same problem. And I'm going to let everything dry and then I'll come back and do this sort of second pass on this. So this is a sort of a 2-day job really. I'm going to leave these overnight, make sure everything is dried properly. Some bits you can see I've actually put little clips on because some of the card has also split, so I've been gluing that back together, and because it's card it tends to want to sort of pull apart, so a few little clips just in some key places will help hold that. And then tomorrow, once everything's dry, I can take these clips off, and again I'm going to do a second pass with this gluing. I've also left some of the more damaged pieces because I want to tackle those separately. This is really just to get the sort of delamination stuff stuck back down, because you always feel like you're going to catch that and tear it and make things worse. So just by sort of gluing it in place, I'm hoping to sort of stop any of that sort of worry that I have every time I move a piece that I'm going to tear it even more. So certainly it's made an improvement already. There's still a long way to go, but I think just gluing those pieces back down will really help. It just makes everything feel a lot more sturdy and a lot more like you're getting somewhere. So I'm going to come back to this tomorrow now and just let all the glue dry overnight. P-O-Y, P-O-L-L-O-I. So I came back the next day and did a little bit more gluing on those bits of card and got all the final bits of sort of delamination stuck back down. And then my next process on that was actually to try and flatten it. So what I've done is I've been out into my garage and I found 2 very heavy bits of MDF wood, and I've sort of sandwiched it between those 2 bits of wood with some paper around it so that it doesn't get dirty. And I'm now going to leave that sort of sandwiched together. I'm actually going to put a couple of bricks on top of the wood as well, just to push everything down. I'll leave that for a couple of weeks and we'll see what happens. So in the meantime I can get on with fixing some of the other pieces, including this one, which has got quite a lot of damage to it. This piece is sort of extra complicated because it has one piece that bends up. You can see it's all a bit awkward and a bit sort of overlapped. This is supposed to sort of bend up like that and have a bar pointing down to the ground floor of the Death Star, but what has happened is it's sort of been torn, so you can see it's come away at that point. It's also come away on that side, and then the thin bar here at some point again has been bent, so it's got a crack or sort of a tear along that edge. Now this edge I'm sort of toying with 2 ways of doing it. I think I'm going to try the simplest way first, which is I'm just going to drop some EVA glue into this join and then fold it up, and I'll sort of pin it with a couple of little clamps and hold it in place, and hopefully that would glue it and sort of make it firm enough that it will hold flat again. And again, likewise with these 2 pieces here where they're torn away, I think the only thing I can do is just try and glue them back together. I was thinking of maybe sort of reinforcing it with some card, but it doesn't look like it was ever done like that in the first place. So again, just a lot of EVA glue on both sides and clamp it down, and then that should hold it. Again, we've got a little bit of delamination going on, but some clamps, and just leave it for a day, and then we'll do some bits more fixing on it. It's a fairly long-winded process again, but I think it's all going to work. It's just a sort of a slow job. So I'll get the EVA glue ready and we'll pour some in there, and I'll also make sure that I've got a lot of these clamps so that I can sort of clamp everything in place. So let's get gluing on this bit. I've given the first side plenty of time to dry now and left the clamps on for a good few hours, and it's actually produced quite a sturdy fix. That's feeling pretty firm again, so I can see this is going to work well on the other side. So again, I'm going to put a liberal amount of EVA glue in this tear here, and then I'm going to clamp everything sort of down or weight it down, and we'll let that dry for a couple of hours again, and I'm hoping that should produce a very nice sort of firm fitting that should hold this in place pretty well. Obviously you're never going to want to use this playset too much and sort of move it too much, but then when it was first made I don't think it was really designed to be sort of taken apart and sort of built over and over again. Because it was made from cardboard, it was a sort of build it once and leave it for as long as you could sort of playset. But this is working. So you can see here, this is the tear again. It's pretty sort of deep and goes quite far back, so a liberal amount of EVA glue on that and then clamping it and we should be able to get that to hold as well. And the little bit down here that was quite weak, that seems to have fixed pretty well. It's got a slight bow to it, but again I'm going to try and straighten that just sort of carefully with books and give it a bit of weight on it over time. That should sort of straighten down, but it's actually feeling relatively strong again. So let's get on with the EVA glue and we'll get this piece repaired as well. It's a lot of glue to go, and then there's a bit more delamination here as well, which I might as well do at the same time. In fact, I'm going to do that bit first. Now we come on to a particularly tricky sort of area of this Death Star, and that is this bottom floor. Now this is the underside of the bottom floor, and it has a sort of picture of some TIE fighters and X-Wings fighting, and it folds along this middle crease. So you can see here, if I lift this up, it folds this way, and what has happened is that this crease has actually torn at one end. It's not easy to show because it's so large, but you can see here it's actually ripped. The cardboard is supposed to be the hinge, and it has ripped at one end, and I don't want it to rip any further along, so I'm going to try and transplant in a new bit of card. I have some here. Now this is not the same thickness as the card that is originally used, because what I want to do is cut a piece of this sort of the top surface of the original card out and then stick this on to make a new hinge section. It only hinges sort of part way through the card. You can see there it's a fairly sort of simple way of doing it. They basically cut into the card and cut through the first sort of 2/3 of it, and it's the bottom third that acts as the hinge. So I want to replace that bottom third with this new card, and it is going to be quite a tricky job. What we're going to do is fold this flat here, and I need to sort of see how much, or see how far in I can cut this new piece of card. So you can see again this is delaminated a bit, which helps. There's actually a water stain here, so you can see where it's got wet. So I can fold back this piece of sort of the top surface, and what I want to do is cut out, I'm actually going to pull it back a little bit further, I'm going to cut out a section like that, but just to sort of the top few layers, and I'm going to insert this bit of card on it to make a new hinge section. So to do that, first thing I need to do is sort of make a little template, I think. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this. I think actually the way to do it is probably to cut out the bits that I want first. So I'm going to mark with a pencil where I'm going to cut, and then we'll cut out the top layers. I was sort of thinking I could just stick a bit of paper on top of this, but I don't think that's going to be strong enough. It needs to be card. So let's do it with this ruler. I reckon if we do it actually the thickness of the ruler, we can go in quite far then. Yeah, so I'm going to do the thickness of the ruler into about there. So I'm just going to mark with a pencil where I'm going to cut the top surface away. And we can use this top surface as a guide to make the replacement hinge part. I've not done this before, but I can see in principle it will work quite well. It feels a little bit scary doing it, but I think this will work. So you can see there, that is the area I'm going to cut out. So I'm going to score it with the scalpel and try and peel off a piece of card that is the exact same thickness as this, and this card is just slightly under 1 millimeter, and this is a similar sort of stock, similar sort of quality card. Then we can stick that in, and that will be the new bit of hinge, and then we'll stick these surfaces back over the top of it, and you won't even notice it's there. So I'm going to get cutting, and we'll see what it looks like. seem to have worked quite well. It's a bit like fitting a hinge in a bit of wood, so you're sort of making a slightly thinner bit of an area, and then we're making a hinge out of some other cardboard. So this is going to be the hinge. What I've done is I've cut this to size, so it's the same width as the two bits that I've cut off either side, and I've also scored it so that I've now got a nice fold, and that is going to be how we are going to stick this in, because obviously this folds this way, so we're making a hinge that folds that way. You can see I can just drop that on, and it sort of is now countersunk into the surface of the cardboard, and when we stick these bits back over the top of it, you won't even notice it's there, but it will give this edge an extra bit of strength, and then we can chop that off. So we're now going to again just glue it back in place. I'm going to make sure these are sort of as flat as they can be. There's a little bit of a bow to them, so I'm just going to gently bend them. I think the thing to do is just glue the hinge part in, and then put some weights on top of it, and we'll let that dry, and then we can glue down the top surface. I think that should do nicely. So again, just some EVA glue. I'm going to liberally paste that over the areas that I've cut. And then we'll stick the hinge on. So this hinge has to be up this way, and just make sure we've got it around the right way. Push that into place. That does fit really nicely. And then I'm going to get some weights and just put that onto the top of that, and we'll let that dry, and then we can come back. We'll glue the top surface back down. We'll see how well that works. I've already fixed some of the other issues on the top of this Death Star, or on the bottom of this Death Star. There's still a few more bits of delamination to fix on the other side, but again, I'll do that once this hinge is sort of glued in place, because I don't want to sort of damage this anymore and rip this. I think this should hold it pretty well. So yeah, a few weights on that, and we'll come back in a couple of hours. The card now seems to have stuck pretty firmly, and the hinge part of it works really well. So I'm just going to re-stick the surface over the top of it, and then I'll chop the edge off just with my scalpel, and that piece will be good to go. And that's it for this part of the restoration. I've managed to get an awful lot done, and the whole set is actually feeling a lot more sturdy. And there's still quite a few bits to do, but overall it's you know, a lot better and a lot more displayable. You can see here, this is the piece that I had problem with, them sort of most problem with the ripped hinge, and you can see that is now actually working quite nicely. It's stuck really firmly. There's still a few little bits of delamination going on there, which I need to sort of solve and glue again, but overall it's not looking too bad. I've just got a few bits of final gluing going on, and the hinge on the main base is now repaired. That sort of cardboard insert has worked particularly well. Again, that just needs to dry a little bit more, but it does work really nicely. And now the next part is going to be sort of putting it together once everything is dried. I've got the bulk of the PlayStation is now sort of under my bed with lots of weights and stuff on it, and I'm hoping that over a couple of weeks that will flatten down nicely, and that gives me time to try and hunt down some missing parts. I have the Top Gun section here with a little sort of seat place, but I'm missing the canopy that goes over the top. I have seen some reproductions over the years, but I can't actually find one, so I'm going to try and hunt one down. If not, I might have to try and make something. I'm also missing a couple of the sets of clips that go around the outside. You need 5 of these. I have 3 here, so I've ordered a reproduction 3D print of one just to see what that's like. It's a little bit expensive, so I've only ordered one for the moment just to see what it's like and if it's any good. If it's no good, I might try and make my own, because I reckon you could make something fairly similar out of some polystyrene board, but we'll wait and see what that 3D print looks like. I also need to find some stands. I've got a source for those, the same stands that I normally buy, so I'll talk about those in the next one. And all of these bits need a good cleanup, so I'm really just going to leave this for a couple of weeks and see if I can flatten some of the other pieces. This baseboard is actually not looking too bad now. Some of the others are a little bit bowed still, but as I say, time will hopefully fix those. Time and weights pressed on top of them, certainly. So I do need to say a massive thank you to Jules Burt. I'm going to put a link in the description to his YouTube channel, so go and check that out, because he does some great videos about unboxing his vintage Star Wars toys. And if you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to subscribe to toy-polloi, tap the subscribe button and tap the bell as well to be notified each time I upload a new video. And thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.